Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I am the artist and studio manager here at Baltimore Clayworks. We are thrilled that you all have joined us. I would like to acknowledge that I am joining from my office located on Piscataway and Susquehannock land, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual artist talk given today by Wayman Scott. He was a recipient of the Nyberg Fund Grant in 2021. He is finishing up a short-term residency at Baltimore Clayworks and currently has a solo exhibition on display until March 25th. And I want to share with everyone the Nyberg Fund for Artist Development applications opens tomorrow, February 1st, and closes on March 18th. The stipend of $1,500 is awarded to one Clayworks artist annually and helps support travel, study, and/or working in another community outside of Baltimore. You can find more information about this on our website under scholarships and grants. For more information about our artist talks, please visit our virtual library at baltimoreclayworks.com. I will now turn it over to Wayman.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and hello, everyone. I am so grateful to be here today. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about my story, what led me here to Clayworks, and how my life has influenced my art. I'll also go into some of my influences in art and human figure and sculpture, and I will talk about some of the techniques that I have learned along the way from the many people that have influenced me. So to start off, I would like to share a picture of, so I started, let me share my screen. So I am a short-term resident here at Baltimore Clayworks, and I appreciate the opportunity to do fine arts. The fine arts world was a huge influence to me, and it has been a privilege and a tremendous learning experience to serve and work here at Baltimore Clayworks as a short-term resident. So I appreciate the learning experience. I studied fine arts at Towson University. I don't have a BFA, I have an MS. However, I was able to take some of the learnings that I got in my time at Towson University and apply that to human figure. Human figure has been really the source and summit of my work, the focus of my work across mediums. Here you see a picture of myself when I was young and when I was small. I don't think I was actually sculpting then. I was taking clay or polymer or even aluminum foil and making it into shape. To me, it was playing and making toys. I didn't know it was a form of art. I also was practicing pencil work. Pencil art was my foundation. And from a young age, I did that. I model a lot of my work after my mother, Carolyn Scott, who was an accomplished scholar. She was an activist, and she was also a brilliant musician. So she had this polymath element to her. And I modeled myself inadvertently around that too. So as a director of diversity, equity, and inclusion at a local hospital system, GBMC, and Gilchrist, I am putting my activism into health equity and access to care. In terms of an artist, I have had a chance for tremendous learning opportunities here at Clayworks, and I I wouldn't call myself a scholar, but I do write and I am published. So I see all these parallels and mirrors. There was a 20-year hiatus from fine arts that I took, right? So when I was maybe a sophomore in college, my mother began to get sick, um, and she was such a central figure of her. But um, we didn't know what it was, and test after test after test, until finally she was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. As you can imagine, that's a pretty uh, difficult disease diagnosis to get, and then to family members and people's children, parents, that can be difficult too. And I remember vividly the day that she tried to sit down at the piano. She used to love to play Beethoven, and she couldn't move her fingers. And she wept. And along the way, um, I lost my passion and my drive for art. So I stopped doing my freelance pencil work, which I had been doing and from high school up until college. I stopped sculpting. I did have some art outlet through the fine art through music, and I played lead guitar with Righteous Soul and William Soul, two bands in Baltimore. Um, and as you can see, she lived with ALS for a very long time. One of the longest people survivors at the Johns Hopkins ALS clinic, and she passed away maybe not even 6 months before the birth of her first grandchild. And at this point, I was not engaged in any kind of artistic activity, not in music, not in writing. I was just going the academic route, getting credentials and degrees and writing. And it wasn't until when I was working at Gilchrist as a hospice chaplain, I was speaking with a gentleman, and he shared about Baltimore Playworks and suggested that I go. And I came here and had my first class with Eileen O'Donnell in January 2020, and I fell in love with it. And I realized that although I did do some freelance work and practice realism as a pencil artist, I had a stronger aptitude for ceramics. So I dove in like full speed, and I relied on some of my influences across the way. So if you look at this image right here, we're going back to the human figure, right? The human form. This image right here was drawn by a DC-based artist, John Nelson. And I consider him to be a hyper-realist. From the time that I was maybe 14 years old until, my days in the art department at Towson University, I chased this man's style. I chased this hyperrealism. I said, one day I'm going to be like John. One day I'm going to draw like him. One day I'm going to paint like Chuck Close. And I chased it and I chased it, and I never caught it. And eventually I developed my own style, and I'm okay with that, right? But the idea, the beauty of the human figure, capturing emotions, tones, sentiments. You can do all of this with the human figure, with the human body. If you look here, you see two books on anatomy and expressions in clay from Phil Fart. One is focuses on the anatomy, the facial features. He was a tremendous tool for me. I bought these books in part with the funds from the Nyberg grant. And to the right here, you'll see a book on drapery, also Phil Fart, gestures, drapery, and the techniques to use them in clay. And I incorporated the tone and sentiment of John Nelson's features that he would put into his work, and some of the technical mechanics that Phil Fart taught in his book. And he has many books. Two of my other influences have been Isolina. Isolina exposed me to building big. Isolina let me know that this idea of this Baltimore Pieta, right, to lift up the struggle for Black lives, especially in the face of police brutality. I had no idea I could make a life size when I thought that ceramics had had its limit. And then I met Iselina, who showed me an 8 foot tall figure that they made. And they made it so well you can barely see the seams. Um, and I had multiple one-on-one consults with Iselina as they shared, how do I build big? Iselina trained with Christina Cordova, who is a ceramicist that builds big, and I think Cordova is a solid builder, but Iselina, they they build in slabs. So Iselina shared with me the type of clay I would need to use if I wanted to build at a large scale, a scale close to life. They suggested standard 420 white, which has recently been discontinued. It's extremely high grit and it holds its own. It can be durable even outdoors, in freezing weather, rain, what have you, it can do it. What I was using before was Soul Date 60. And yes, it does have some grit, but it doesn't have the grit that standard 420 white uses. This is important, and I'm going to get to why at a later date or at a later on in this show. So on the right here, you see the figure of a woman, and the woman is like down. There is this inner essence. There's something tranquil and brooding about this piece, but the facial features were captured with such detail and precision. This piece is by another one of my influences, Emily Lamb. Emily Lamb is a mastery of human figure and an artistic polymath um, uh, with expertise in multiple mediums of art. But I trained with her and took her classes for a good year and a half. And she was instrumental in helping me take my human figure two-dimensional work and transition it into three-dimensional work with some of the uh, applying some of the realism techniques to the art. Another uh, influence of mine is Clarissa Falzoni, and she also builds big, and she is a hyper realist. And Emily and Christina both helped me in the later stages of the Pieta with some of the structure and work. So the next slide. So I want to get into the draping. So Phil Farr, in his book, Gestures in Drapery, Techniques in Clay, goes over in detail in one of the largest chapters of the book, some of the draping techniques. And what he shows are ways to carve, but really the source and summit of his drapery technique is coil. So you're adding coils to various parts of your figure. So you see here, it's you see it sketched on here, this outline of what is to come. Phil will add coils to his piece, and he will work it. He will work it. He will roll that coil over, sometimes at a 45-degree angle or whatever the angle is required to capture the realism in the flow of the drapery. And this is my Pieta. This is a life-size piece of, or near life-size piece, and it is my rendition. I would call it my rendition of Michelangelo's Pieta, but really this is the Baltimore Pieta, and it represents something very specific. It represents the value of Black lives, and I conceptualized this in late 2020, early 2021. And I did this in the face of police brutality and the killing of unarmed Black men and women and people of color. And sometimes the people that killed them were not even brought, to trial. So in some way, you don't see the value you don't see the divinity, you don't see the meaning of life uh, of Black and brown people. And when I say that, it's anecdotal, but that is the tone and expression that I felt about the justice system, that I felt about parts of the media when we would see this play out again, and when we see this play out again and again. So by using my platform or my voice as an artist, I was able to speak to that. So I made a near life-size Pieta, and Mary and Jesus are depicted here as African American man and woman. Charmaine Young is the model of Mary, and Charmaine is a CNA and information healthcare information specialist at Gilchrist. She has two brothers that are both police officers whom she loves and she trusts. The other model for Jesus is Johnny Joyner, and he is also a CNA, certified nursing assistant for the same hospice, and he has shared his experience with police harassment, and it affected his ability to trust. So we have these two different people playing the part of Jesus and Mary, and they both have two different perspectives, very different perspectives about from their experience of law enforcement, but they both support the movement for Black lives. And I thought it was important to be able to use the subjects to tell the story and meaning behind art. So the drapery here, what I did, I used the coil method, and this coil method involved on top of the slabs that make up this piece. I would literally outline, connect coils in the various parts. Some are small, and still far it has variations in size, because if there's a wrinkled piece of cloth or fabric, they don't all wrinkle in the exact same way, the exact same shape, the exact same size. There's going to be variations. There's going to be corners, nooks, crannies, and that's what I tried to emulate here. So you see here a very thin fold, shorter folds here, and then you see some big, expansive drapes toward the front of Mary's gown. Also, I found it very helpful. What I did here, I almost copied verbatim Michelangelo's draping pattern, but in order to do that, I needed the insights and the skills from Phil Card. Michelangelo carved it in stone, but ceramic is just a whole different ballgame. It's just a different process. So how would I achieve something that had similar patterns to Michelangelo's, but his is stone, mine is ceramic? I had to go back to this source, Phil Card, in his book on drapery, and I found it extremely helpful, because with the top, there were multiple variations in some of the shape, tone, thickness, width, positioning of these drapes, and it was with the help of the techniques in his book that I was able to achieve that. Here you have another angle of the draping. In addition to draping it, Isolina shared that I needed to make the slabs for the piece about 5/8 of an inch, maybe about a half of an inch. And I pretty much followed that. I had slightly larger thickness for the base, and this whole piece is modular. So it separates here, it separates here, it separates here, it separates in the middle, it separates here. And what I did, I put it back together, and I looked at the seams that I was trying to achieve. And the gold standard would have been what Isolina was able to do with their piece, where you could barely see the seam. So I wanted to drape over the seam, and it just didn't work out that way. It was too bulky. So what I did after reassembling it, And maybe about a week after the opening, I came back in, I closed, I mended, I sealed some of the gaps. It was just too big for me, those gaps, so I had to make some adjustments. I think in the future, I will work a little bit more on the seamless connection between two modular pieces, two slabs. So this piece, it took several, just hundreds and hundreds of pounds of standard 420 white. How would you be able to create bases that could support a figure of that weight and that size? Clay can be fragile, clay can be temperamental. So I had to early on build a support system. What I initially was going to do was run large slabs, maybe across the middle. But speaking with Clarissa and Emily Lamb, they shared about the technique of instead of having a large slab arc all the way across the piece, they suggested I have the supporting joist that can give strength. And it was really Emily that was instrumental in helping guide me along in that process. And Clarissa, building big herself, was able to advise me on how to bridge. You can't see the corner here, but inside of here, there is a triangle-shaped bridge that connects this side, the slab on this side, to the slab behind it. So almost like here and here, if this is a corner, there's a little triangle connecting it so that it doesn't split apart in the kiln and to give extra support. So these tips and techniques from Clarissa and Emily were just a huge help in making this happen. And then I have some other pieces. So I have Adam's Burden here, which is one of my earlier works. And it's an expression of emotion, it's an expression of, what do you do if, when you're going through existential reflections, right? When you're reflecting back on your life. And this is the archetypical Adam image, but not the Adam that they use. This is the elder who's looking back on his life, contemplating, coming to terms with his own mortality. I use standard 420 white for this too. So before I built something large with standard 420 white, I wanted to build smaller pieces and experiment to that. And then back to this piece, you notice the color of it. It's like a sandstone. I fired it in the gas kiln after disassembling it, and I overfired it by a good maybe 150 degrees. So you did have it affected the texture, it affected the color. I had to sand it. So you want to be very careful. Whereas this had fully vitrified, this one didn't. I fired this. I just did initially, and then I was able to go back with a palladium Potter's Choice glaze and fully glaze it. Frederick Douglass. This was my last large piece with a Sold 860. It was during the building of the young Frederick Douglass piece that I learned about standard 420 white. And after I hollowed out Frederick Douglass's face, it just collapsed, and I was devastated. And I was walking around Playwork Studio in a bit of a daze, and I found Isolina, and they said, "What's wrong?" I told them, and they came up and they helped me build this piece, and they helped me repair it, and they taught me about the supporting slab structure. So you saw the internal supports for the Pieta, but when you're building a big piece, you can put almost an external scaffolding by adding slabs to the contours of the object for more stability. So after reforming and salvaging the face, I put these slabs there. The clay body is a bit more fragile than standard 420 white, but I think this will be the last larger piece I make with Soldate 60. Um, this piece right here is Congressman Elijah Cummings, and of course Frederick Douglass is an abolitionist and he's a civil rights icon who was instrumental to the end of slavery. Frederick Douglass is also a civil rights icon and Baltimore icon. And we have, is this it? I think that is the last one. So my show Earth and Life, if you would like, if you're available, I'd love for you to come and check it out and bring your friends, bring your school, what have you. But it's likes of Mother Mary Lang, Bob Marley, who won the United Nations Peace Prize, Congressman Cummings, Frederick Douglass, but I centered on civil rights icons, change agents, and agents of peace. So that is the theme. With clay can be it can be a beautiful vessel or a vivid sculpture, but it can be cracked and broken and remended. And I focus a lot on the members of our society, and I focus on the marginalized. I try to make that more in my work. So thank you.
Wayman, thank you so much. That was fascinating.